remember every couch I slept on. I remember feeling anxious about my job. I remember what it felt like to get fired. I remember what it felt like where I couldn't buy this pizza this week because I wasn't making salary or I wasn't saving for my future.
So how did you really learn? Was it just experience? Was it books? Was it mentors? Was it the first investment bankers?
There's no substitute for actual experience doing something yourself for the first time.
So Randall, what did it feel like to do $3.8 billion last year? Talk about that.
Well, number one, I wasn't there at the company, so I left a long time ago.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay.
So it's great to be a founder of a company that has $3.8 billion in revenue,
Amazing.
but I left a long time ago, and all the credit to the growth and success of the company goes to the team since I left there a long time ago. You got to have a great team. We have a great team, great leadership. There were 4 founders of the company. One of the founders, who's a professor, is now the CEO, and it's been very interesting to see someone who was a tenured professor, math professor, who had no business experience, rise up to be a very talented and experienced CEO. So a lot of the growth, success of the company is tied to him and his leadership and the team that he's built there.
And was that the first company that you founded or were a part of?
Well, sort of. In college, I had a t-shirt business, went door to door like I know you did to
door-to-door sales.
Help build, door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
So my freshman year, I saw people selling t-shirts. And I said, gosh, that's interesting. I need money. I didn't have any money in college. I didn't have money to go out for pizza or really the bars. I had a set amount of money each month. And it really just covered what I needed to cover. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I thought I was good with people and was socially not as mature as I wanted to be, but always had the drive, always wanted to make money. So I took $500 of my bar mitzvah money, went to the Yellow Pages. Today, you just go online. Say, okay, there's t-shirts, you can find out what they are, 100% cotton, you got the polyester, you got the weave, but back then you're going through the Yellow Pages and you're making phone calls and you're saying, okay, what kind of t-shirt? So I went out, I took a risk. It was a lot of money for me at the time. I think for my bar mitzvah, I got maybe $1,500. And
what would that be the equivalent right now? Like with like $5,000, $10,000?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
The t-shirts you can buy today for the same price, maybe a little bit more money. So I actually copied a Nike slogan, "Just do it," which you could not do today. Back then, no one really cared. I mean, Nike wasn't really coming after you. I had fluorescent colors. I had the pink, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And Michigan Hoops was in the Final Four, so I said, "Road to the Final Four, just do it." But I went door to door, every single dorm. I think there were 13 or 14 on campus, every single door. So I don't know. We're looking at 5,000 or 6,000 doors, every floor. And I went and I bought these t-shirts for $5. I sold them for $12. So I'm making $7 cash per shirt. And the key was to sell them, you're lugging in a garbage bag, right? It's heavy. So you want to bring with you 50 shirts, 100 shirts. I mean, that's a lot to carry. So you're lugging these around hall by hall and you're selling, you're knocking on doors and you're getting your door slammed in your face. People don't want to buy them, but it was great, man. I made $7 there. I made $7 there, but the long sleeve cost $1 more. And I sold them for $6 more, $18. Like, all right, well, that's good. I'm making $12 a shirt cash. And it was great. You learn the art of cold calling, which I coach and mentor, which I know you do too. Mm-hmm. Sales skills and the ability to knock on a door and face rejection and get your door slammed in people's face is one of the greatest experiences you could have in anyone's career and in your success. So I learned that when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and it was phenomenal. You hone your sales skills, and it's something that my dad told me a long time ago, and he said it in a dating context, which is not appropriate for the show. So I'll mention it here, which is you knock on someone's door. Now I'll say it PG version. Sure. You are interested in a girl, ask her out on a date, she says no. So you go to the next 99, next 98. Say, well, they say no. All right, well, you're not feeling very good about yourself, but the 100th girl says yes. Mm-hmm. So when the 100th girl says yes, you've forgotten about all 99. We're not really talking about dating. We're talking about maybe something more advanced in the dating stage, but I think that's a great lesson to learn. I think it's a great lesson to learn for people doing sales. Keep going, face rejection, and as you do it more and more, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah, so you started around 18. Technology isn't really what it is right now. wasn't a lot of probably, I don't even know, like cell phones probably weren't quite out yet. Internet wasn't around. So what even got you interested in entrepreneurship? Because now I feel it's more of a fad, but at that time, was someone in your family? What was the reason that even got you interested in entrepreneurship?
You know, I had the gene at a young age. I had a lemonade stand outside the house in our neighborhood. Figure, I don't even remember what it was, but you're selling lemonade back then for 50 cents a cup, dollar a cup. And of course, people would stop by, they'd feel bad for you, just like you see some kid today selling lemonade in your neighborhood. You're going to stop, right? You want that kid to do well and feel good about himself, herself. But it was harder back then to start a business. And we're not talking about a real business. We're not talking about filing a limited liability company in the state and getting legal documents and formation documents. We're talking about cash. And really what it was is seeing other people do it and saying, gosh, how can I do that? And it was about reading Business Week. I just had a penchant for it. I was born with the drive. I knew I always wanted to have my own company. But when you read about it and then you see it firsthand and you say, okay, you go up to people and say, okay, well, how do I do that? What are you doing? And then you tell yourself, well, that's not that hard. There's room for somebody else. No one owns the market. At Michigan selling t-shirts, you can make 150 t-shirts. If you have a nice t-shirt, they're going to sell. And if you ever walk into a school bookstore, which I'm sure you do, and you look at all these shirts, say, God, these shirts are terrible. Who's designing these shirts? These shirts are meant for families going to visit their kids and saying, welcome to University of Michigan or Wisconsin dad or Cornell dad. Those are not the shirts that people want. So it's for me, it was in the t-shirt business, looking at other people selling these shirts. Happy Walters, Brad Keywell, Jeff Blau, all billionaires today, by the way. And these were friends of mine who I got to know on campus. We all had the DNA. We all had the drive. They did way better than me selling shirts. I mean, I think Happy Walters, who's an incredible human being, I think he made something like $1 or $2 million in college. Brad Keywell, same thing. He signed the Giving Pledge. He lived in Chicago. I think he founded 4 or 5 public companies. Groupon is the most well-known for people. But these guys were all starting businesses, and and it was hard to have a business back in these days. Today, as you said, it takes 5 minutes, right? And it's easy, right? It takes, you can create your own website for free, basically, just pull something off the net. It could be WordPress something. Maybe it costs you $25 a month to host it, but it's easy and it's cheap. You can try things easily today at very little cost, except the cost of your time, which is valuable, but you can find out very quickly if things are working or not working. So starting a company today is easy. It's in vogue. The ease today allows people with an idea to test it very, very quickly and to find out whether it works. But back then, you're right. I mean, there was no Google, there was no research online. It was much, much harder.
How many billionaires do you know right now, and what are the biggest lessons you've learned from knowing billionaires?
I know a lot of billionaires. The way I got my job at Sun America was writing letters to CEOs after having a very terrible, unsuccessful legal career that I hated. So I went to law school as a means to an end. Back then, I thought, all right, I'm going to graduate Northwestern, which is a top school, top 10 school. I'd make $70,000 a year. This is incredible. I'm rich. Or $70,000 a year, there's nothing that I can't do. And so I was unsuccessful, lost my job, moving to Los Angeles 5.5 weeks after getting there, knew nobody, had $3,000 in the bank, and was looking at waiting tables at your favorite restaurant, and my favorite restaurant, the Olive Garden. I love the Olive Garden. You worked there, so did I. Yeah. one of the great restaurants of all time. Have not been back since I worked there, by the way, a long time ago, but still have fond memories of that place. Sorry, what was the question, by the way?
No, just what were the no, you're good. What are the biggest lessons you've learned?
Yeah, the billionaires. So I then got a job in Costa Mesa, which is exactly 52.5 miles from Los Angeles. I needed a job, or I was going to have to be waiting tables. I had $3,000 in the bank, and my rent was $1,200 a month. So I thought, okay, this is not going well. Got a job down there, 3 hours a day commuting minimum. And if there was traffic on the 405 or something went wrong, it could take 5 hours, maybe on some days. So 6 months later, I went to the manager of the firm downtown. I want to move. He said, no, you got to move down there or you got to leave. So now I was looking for my third legal jobs in 8 months, new world record of the worst kind, right? And then I said, all right, this isn't working. Got a job in Century City, close to my apartment next to the Jack in the Box. I said, all right, I'm going to set out and write letters to CEOs asking for meetings. These were very unique, detailed letters, the kind of letters no CEO had ever received before. And I wrote 300 letters. Everyone said, oh, no one's going to meet with you. CEO of Disney, Viacom, Sumner Redstone, every studio in town, and nearly every public company in Los Angeles. And through that method, I met tons of people, 80 people out of 300. Everyone said, no one is going to meet with you. So I met a lot of billionaires that way. My boss was a billionaire, Eli Broad, who at the time was one of only 3 people to start 2 Fortune 500 companies. At the time, he was CEO of Sun America, and that was my big break. So, but I have such amazing stories of billionaires that I met through that process. And then again, through my career, especially in the tech world, you just meet a lot of people from being in your circle. And you ask how many billionaires I've met? I mean, more than 50.
Wow.
Maybe 100 at this point, both in the United States and throughout the world. And I mean, they're all driven, right?
Of course.
They're all very, very driven. I'd say about a third of those that I met didn't make the money themselves. So the DNA there is a little different. But I think they all have a lot in common: drive, work ethic, creativity, doing things different, tenacity, empathy, good listening skills, and knowing how to lead and how to sell.
Wow, that's amazing. So you go to college, you start selling t-shirts, you finish college, you start doing your legal career, not really a fit. When is the first real business you build, and how does that kind of unfold?
Yeah, I mean, I was at Sun America, had a great job working for someone, one of the most successful business people on the planet, Eli Broad, and hired me to be the assistant to the chairman, which meant I got to spend a lot of time with him, meet lots of investment bankers. I was technically in the corp dev group, which meant that we were looking for a financial services company to buy. After a year, I told them more to do. Sun America did $1 billion of GAAP net income my last year. I was there for 3 years. So there wasn't a lot that I could materially contribute to the team. I want to measure my success. I'm one of those people that wants to see the outcome of my work, and I want to see how well I did. And so it's very hard to measure results at a company that size. So after a year, I went to him and said, hey, I need more to do. He said, you will get more playing time the next year. We were looking at all these companies to buy, financial services companies, insurance companies. Our stock price had risen over 6,000% in 5 years. The number one stock on New York Stock Exchange. So during that period of time, I looked around and there were not a lot of opportunities for me to get promoted. In that job, you get one of, I think, 6 corporate level VP jobs. They were all taken by people who had been there at the company for a long time, which meant you had executives, most of whom were young in their early to mid 30s with tens of millions of dollars of stock. They're not leaving, right? They're going to stay. After 2 years, I thought, all right, I'm not happy. I'm seeing what's going on in the tech world. I'm reading in Business Week about all these millionaires starting these exciting companies. I said, this is something that I think I want to get into. So I go back and get an MBA with a Northwestern law degree. I thought, what's going to really help me? Stanford, Harvard. I don't test well, so the GMAT, probably not a good thing for me. And really didn't want to move and didn't want to spend the money to do that. So I started looking around, what is it that I want to do? And you meet some smart guys. And I did. And that's really how we got going. MIT, they were going there. One was a professor, a student, a Sloan first-year business student, and we formed a company that changed the way that traffic was served on the net. Back in the day, if a farmer had cut a backhoe in Kansas, half of the traffic of the country would go out. So we invented a new way to serve web traffic where instead of the same file being sent back and forth to CNN's server farm. Today, no one has their own server farm. And back then, people had their own servers at their companies. And for example, CNN had more people in the tech room than the newsroom. Its salary is 3 times higher. And they still couldn't serve the traffic when there was a big news story. The sites would all go down. There's too much traffic. You're sending that file back and forth. So if someone in New York is hitting the CNN news site in Georgia, that video file gets deconstructed into bytes and bits, zeros and one, lines of code, gets reassembled at the server farm and goes back and forth every time. So we eliminated that need by having servers around the world, and instead of going back and forth to your server farm, it would be sent very close to the user, improving the speed dramatically. So we started a company, and things went well.
And
Akamai Technology is the same as the name of the company.
Yeah,
Akamai.
So that was really the first big company. Do you? I guess I'd be curious. Is that your first run-in with tech? Did you have to learn the tech? Did you bring in a CTO? Like, how did that unfold?
Yeah, people ask me how you became a technologist or an expert in technology. And the funny part is I'm not a technologist. I'm not an expert in technology. So people will ask, well, how would you leave your job at Sun America, $2 million of unvested stock options on the table for an unfunded, unproven, untested company across the country with no funding, no CEO on technology that no one was using? And the answer was because I'd worked with some brilliant people at Sun America, and working with brilliant people, you get a baseline of where someone's intelligence level. Now, someone's intelligence level doesn't mean they can build a company. Sure. But I had worked with executives at Sun America who helped build that company. So when I met my partners, we had this technology that was going to revolutionize the way that traffic was served on the web in a massive way, in a massive market. So the potential and the promise was massive. And what happened was the technology was so sophisticated. You saw the movie Good Will Hunting. Yeah. And at some point in the scene, there's a chalkboard filled with mathematical formulas. Well, when we would go in and pitch Yahoo, CNN, all of our first beta customers, people that would test the product, I had relationships with these CEOs for my letter writing campaign. I'd worked at Sun America, so I had some credibility now on the resume to ask to get these meetings. So the CEOs of these big companies would set up the meetings. It would usually be with someone kind of a mid-level manager. Okay, we're going to give them the meeting. And then what would happen is every single meeting unfolded the same way. You got the manager taking the meeting, then you got the manager bringing in his boss, too complicated for the manager. Then you got the manager bringing in that manager's manager becoming a vice president, that person bringing his boss in ultimately led to the CTO of these companies. CTO is major role at these tech companies. These are huge companies. And every single time you could see the reaction of the CTO when he or she understood the promise of what we were, the possibilities of what we could do. And so it was that moment in your due diligence, just watching people's reaction and saying, gosh, if these people are that excited about the technology of what we're doing, there's something here. And for me, I thought, all right, I'm giving up my perch, I'm giving up my status, I'm giving up my title, managing director title, companies in Boston, very inconvenient, obviously. All my network is Los Angeles, but this seemed like something that was educational, I could learn, and even if it failed, it would be beneficial to my career, so I was willing to take the risk. And
so from that, you then jumped. What was the transition from that into Jump Investors? Was that the next business you built?
That was the next business, rightly or wrongly, and it's mostly wrongly. When you're the founder of a company that's very well known, people think you have the magic touch. They think everything that you build is going to be successful. Right. That is completely false, and one really has nothing to do with the second company. Yeah, you're a little smarter, you have more experience, but every company is independent. You should always look at those with a new, fresh set of eyes because it could be in a different business, but you're more mature. You do know a little bit more about what you're doing, and you've learned a lot when you helped start a company that ultimately did very, very well. But you asked what the transition was. they asked me to move to Boston. I was not going to move to Boston, so I left the company. At that point, I was being bombarded with job offers. It was well known in Los Angeles that some kid had started this company in a short amount of time. I mean, our company went public 458 days after we started. That's a world record that will never be beaten. That's not a good world record or a bad world record, because 2.5 years later, our stock lost 99.93% of its market value, going from 35 billion to 56 million, delisted from NASDAQ. So
What caused that? I mean, what causes
market crash, the tech crash in 2002. We also went public in 1999. In our last trading day of that year, our company was worth $335 billion, and we had GAAP revenues of $3.2 million. So,
And this is for Akamai
Yeah.
or Jump? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Akamai. So you asked how I started. So when I left the company, I had a lot of people contact me for job offers.
And Randall, did you leave, before we dive into that, did you leave because you felt the opportunity no longer served you, or what was that main reason you left?
They wanted me to move, and I just wasn't going to move, and that was part of my deal.
Okay.
I had my wife. We had just recently been married. She's from LA. I had all these amazing contacts in Los Angeles. I grew up in
So
Detroit.
it's like, move to Boston or we're going to force you out. type deal.
Right. Pretty much. I mean, I had the choice to stay in Boston. I had the choice to stay in Los Angeles, being head of West Coast sales. I wasn't going to do that. I had a managing director role at Sun America, and then I'd help hire the VP of sales guy. And at this point, I knew I could get a CEO job in Los Angeles at some other tech company if I wanted to. And people were contacting me on a weekly basis. Hey, you want to go run this startup? But I also was getting, as a founder of a well-known tech company, I was getting the chances to invest in a lot of these new companies, and they were high-quality companies. You're a founder of a well-known company, having a founder of a well-known company in the cap table and saying, "Oh, Randy Kaplan is an investor in this company," brings credibility to the company. That was a good thing for a lot of people. And I was window dressing in a lot of situations, but I was always there to help, and I was a value add person if they wanted me to help. So I started getting those, and when I left, I said, all right, what do I want to do next? It was just very, very clear that was something that I was going to do. Eventually, we had a lockup, which means I couldn't sell my stock, but at some point, that stock was going to be free to sell, and I did sell, and I had money, and then I started to invest my own capital, and that's how I started.
So moving into Jump Investors, basically it's a venture capital firm. I don't want to simplify it, but it's a venture capital firm. So you went from Akamai, hopefully I'm saying that right, I keep looking at the word Akamai, and then you moved into Jump Investors. And so what kind of took you, it seems like, maybe it's not, but it almost seems like a weird jump where you go from a tech company to almost now you're investing full time. I don't know, what made you get into that? I'm always curious, like, how your brain is thinking about that.
It was just a natural progression. Again, I thought about being an investor, and at Sun America, I learned a lot about finance. I was always into personal finance. I read Business Week at a subscription at age 14. So I was always very interested in investing. When I had these chances to invest in some exciting companies, it just kept coming and coming. So for me, it was a simple transition, and I realized you could make a lot of money if you hit it right. Now, everyone thinks, "Oh, you're venture capital. That's so cool. That's awesome. What a great role. I want to do that." Well, it's not that exciting at times. I love meeting with people. I love learning new things. That's awesome. And to help, inspire, and motivate, and actually add value to people who are starting companies is great. But the reality is, at every venture firm, most companies fail. So unlike a real estate deal where there's actually land value, for example, there's something left over if the deal fails in most cases. Here, it's a zero. So if you have 6 of 10 companies going to zero, that's not very fun.
And is that the goal, or is it even less? Like, I've heard 1 to 10, I've heard 2 out of 10. How many of the companies are you guys hoping will hit it big? And is the goal to get $1 billion or more? Is that kind of the play?
I mean, it depends. So I think most people would say you need at least 1 10x of 10 on a weighted average basis to make it work. Now, sometimes you get lucky. I think investors in our company made in the first round over 200 times their money. And in some cases, if they sold at the peak, maybe they made 350 times their money.
Wow.
You just never know where people sold. Now, that's that's a unicorn. It's like winning the lottery. Don't expect it a second time. A lot of these venture funds who really get the good deals, and it's the brand name venture companies get the best deals. The little people like me, even back then that nobody knew, you're fighting to get into these deals, and it's really very hard to get in. All these venture firms want the whole deal, right? You got $1 billion fund, and putting in $1 million isn't going to move the needle.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm looking for, of course, $1 billion exits. I think we had 7 or 8 of those in our portfolio. Now, a lot of those were not first round deals either. So you're getting in the last round. And so, but we're still making money on those deals, but we're not making a 10x. Maybe if it does well, like a Lyft or Diddy, those returns are less, but they're still very good. Sure. So you are looking for results. I mean, in our case, I don't really have a value there, right? But if we invested a $5 million valuation, company sells for $100 million, you're not making a 20x because they're typically raising more capital. So if that deal works out, you may be making 2.5, 3 times, 4 times your money, depending on how the company does. But we're looking at least in my case with my own personal capital, and today this is only my personal capital, and Jump has been my personal capital. We don't take people's money. We are looking for $1 billion exits.
Wow.
Whether that happens or not, who knows?
You went to Akamai, left, took that money, started Jump.
Yes.
So because you did that, you didn't really have to go, I would say, I don't want to say the old school route, but most people who are building venture funds, if they're not using their old capital, they have to go out and find a bunch of investors.
Right.
So you didn't really have to go down that route. You just used your own money for the most part. Is that accurate?
It's 100% accurate. Okay. And what's interesting is I had a bunch of venture firms calling me and say, "Hey, we'd like you to be a partner in our venture fund." And obviously it's less risk, but I also want to be my own boss. I want to work for myself. I want to do what I wanted to do. I was going to have family and kids, and not that that would impede as a partner in a major VC firm, because you can pretty much take as much time as you want off. But I just want to build my own thing. So for me, it was not the right call.
And so because you're investing, did you take a more active role where maybe you had a team that's helping them do certain actions, or was it simply just an investing standpoint where you would give the company X amount of funds in return for equity, and then hopefully that they would do really well?
Well, I think those are 2 separate questions. The first question is, what kind of team did I build?
Sure. Yeah.
And I had a lot of people cold calling me, like I was cold calling people, and these were very smart people, investment bankers. So I hired 2 people from the best investment bank in Los Angeles at the time, DLJ. A guy named Ken Moelis ran that firm. Now he's his own publicly traded bank, Moelis & Company, which is one of the best in the world. But these 2 young kids, and I shouldn't even call them kids, they were 24, 25 years old, very smart. One went to Berkeley, one went to Penn, was Phi Beta Kappa. They joined me. So I was getting so many deals, Tanner, that at that point, you just don't want to miss any. So it was, and you also want to prove that it wasn't luck, even though a lot of it was luck, right? And I think we should never kid ourselves that a lot of our success, no matter who you are, is attributable luck. It's true, you put yourself in that situation, you work hard, you got to be ready when it happens. Sure. But still, I mean, every successful entrepreneur I know, and Mark Cuban talked about this on my podcast, has some degree of luck that contributes to their success. Right. So I had these 2 guys come work with me, and it was only my own capital, but we did a lot of due diligence. We sifted through those deals, and we ultimately invested. When they left, when the market crashed in 2002 or 2003, it was then just me making these calls. And today, it's me making these calls. I don't have another person on my team that helps me in my venture portfolio.
Wow.
It just comes in. These deals come in through long relationships. They always come in through people I know. And that's how my deals come through. That's how I do
So
my
2
deals.
things I've taken away so far is the first is the way you started your career is you did something that it seems like no one else would do. You reached out to over 300 different CEOs. Right. You got 80 plus meetings.
Right.
Started probably learning a ton, got connections. You built Akamai, excuse me. I'm going to say it wrong.
Helped build Akamai at the beginning.
Helped to build Akamai. Left, had a, let's say substantial amount of money, started Jump Investors, and then you initially had those 2 investment bankers. Is there anything you've learned in terms of, did that come more from a relationship, or was it more a skill of you learning how to hire and audit talent?
Which part?
The investment makers. So when you went into Jump Investors and you started that, and you initially, I know you don't have them now, but when you initially had them, do you feel that came more just from being really good at nurturing relationships, which it seems like is a skill set you have, or did it come from hiring, knowing how to audit talent, like you just really knew what you were looking for?
Yeah, I know investment bankers at high performing lead investment banks are very talented people. It's very hard to get jobs there. These are people who went to very good schools. And I'm talking about, and so I do a lot of coaching. It doesn't matter where you go to school in terms of how successful you are, right? Once you start a company, it's a blank slate. Having said that, to get a job at a leading investment bank today, Goldman Sachs would probably be the best, or at least most people think the best. You got to be a very talented person. You also know that you have to have a very strong work ethic. I mean, despite the touchy-feely today and mental health issues, which are very important, which a lot of young investment bankers do complain about, young investment bankers work 100 hours a week. They're very, very motivated. They know that's the deal going in. They know how to create financial models. So I really like that profile. And those are the kinds of people that, the two people that I had join me at the company had that work ethic. I remember coming in one day, Tanner, and I used to get in back then at 5:30 in the morning. I didn't have kids. I work long hours. I preach work ethic. And I was very, very busy at that time, which I still am, but these deals were coming so fast, so furious. Like I said, I really didn't want to miss any of the next big one. But I come into work one day, and I go into Tom Barber's office, who's one of the two guys, and I'm looking around. There's a light on in someone's office, and I go in there, and I see legs hanging out from beneath Tom's desk. I thought, oh, holy shit, Tom died. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I then look under the desk, and Tom is sleeping up with his head on a stack of Wall Street journals as pillows. I look at him, and his heart was breathing. I could see his heart breathing. So I wake him up, Tom, what's up? What's up? I said, hey. I said, you okay? He said, yeah. What's going on, Tom? And he said, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, I came in, I thought you were dead. What are you doing here? He said, oh, I was just up late doing some reading on background for a potential deal that we had. And I slept here. I was here till I put it down at 4 a.m. I figured I was going to take a little nap and wake up, and I was going to keep going. And that just said a lot about Tom Barber and the DNA that he had. And so he asked me what kind of people I hired. Those are the kind of people. Tom now has his own private equity firm, massively successful. The second person is Soon Fo. He retired at the largest hedge fund in Los Angeles, Canyon Capital. I hooked him up with then the CEO of that firm, Josh Friedman, when he was looking to do something else. I really value my people. I value their loyalty. I want them all to succeed. And so when they move on, I want them to do what they want to do. I help them. And in this case, I introduced Soon to Josh Friedman. Josh said, I'm not bringing on new people at Canyon. And I said, please meet with Soon. And he did, and he hired him. And Soon retired at 38. Now he's just managing his own capital.
Oh, man, that is amazing. So helped found Akamai, went to Jump Investors. Then you also went on to found Sandy, which essentially is, it's a website for beaches. Can you talk a little bit more what it actually does?
Sure. So let's go back to what created Sandy. So I'm a beach lover, and the stats around the world is 99% of people love the beach.
Yeah.
So I met my current wife, Madison, greatest woman in the world. And we went
the
to
right answer.
That is the right answer. She is the greatest woman in the world. I love her more than anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we have been dating a month. We go to Greece. We're staying in a nice hotel, and we go to the concierge. And that's where people go when they want beach information. And we can talk about that in a second. So the concierge, we want a black sand beach. She whips out one of those paper maps. She unfolds it, takes a Sharpie, and draws a point in the map where there was a line, not the name of a road. Said, I think there's one over here. So she circles something, said, I think there's an old barn house out there. So we drive out there in a little a Miat, a Mini or Fiat convertible, and we're out there, and it's a hot day, 90 degrees. We're in a convertible, sun beaming down on us. We drive out there. Suddenly there's no cell reception. There's no food, no bathroom, no water. We get out there. we're looking at the map. We're like, okay, are we lost? We're not sure where we are. And there's a bunch of old barn houses, and you've seen on a road where there's an old barn somewhere, and there's maybe one wall standing in some stone brick or something like that. Well, there were a lot of those, and so we're thinking, okay, well, this is ridiculous. We knew the beach was off to one side. And we said, all right, we somehow have to get through that. And we're driving around now. We're lost. We can't figure it out. And we see what looks like an old clearing in the road. But you had weeds growing through it. You could see dirt tracks going into it. And I don't know if you ever have seen the movie Taken with Liam Neeson.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I thought, all right, we got this wealthy person coming to Greece in a remote location that someone may have sent me to, and I think we're going to get kidnapped or murdered, and no one's going to find our bodies. And I thought, this is crazy. My Madison said, oh, this is interesting. I'm sure through there we'll just go through these weeds. And if you saw another movie called Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, at some point there are corn stalks in a field, and you can't see where you are in the corn stalks. And that's what these weeds on a dirt, bumpy road reminded me of. We're driving in a little Fiat Mini. What is it? 4 feet from the ground to the top of the door max. And at some point, the weeds were taller than the car. So we go through, we drive bumpy road, maybe a mile. Takes a long time to get there. I figure, okay, we've made a serious mistake. She said, keep going. I want to be a good boyfriend. All right, yeah, this is great. And we get there, and we find this beautiful expanse of black sand beach with shale formations, one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen. And I thought, that's an aha moment. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're always looking to solve difficult problems. This was a huge data problem. And I went back to the hotel. I said, gosh, is there something here? I put in Greek beaches. It's .gr for Greece on Google. I went to .us. And at this point, this was 9 years ago, there was very little information about beaches, no definitive beach resource. There were all these little local beach websites, incomplete paragraphs. There wasn't really bloggers back in the day. Back then, there were very little bloggers. So I started thinking, all right, this is a very interesting problem. It's a massive problem. To catalog every beach in the world, there is no list. And you start doing research. What are the categories people would want to know on a website like this? And we went through every category. So what kind of sand is there? We have 7 types of sand. What color is the sand? There are 7 colors of sand. Is there food, bathroom, shower, parking, free parking, paid parking? Can you surf, swim, play volleyball? Is there barbecue? We started going through all these major categories. We came up with over 100. And then we thought, all right, how many beaches are there? Well, good luck finding that. There's actually over 100,000 beaches. So from a very methodical human process, we've gone through and we've cataloged over 100 categories of data for more than 100,000 beaches in 212 countries. When you think about it, when we talk about TAM, total addressable market, how big is the beach tourism business? It's $5 trillion a year, and there's no definitive beach resource anywhere in the world. And that's what we've created. So essentially, it's a Yelp for beaches. You can go in and find any information about any beach in the world. Today, the average traveler for a beach vacation will look at over 38 different websites before booking a beach vacation. So if you go online now, you're going to go to Google, you see all kinds of things, TripAdvisor, Expedia, Yelp has some beaches. You got to go through a lot of things, articles, blogs, and it's hard to find a definitive resource that's in one place. So that's what we've created. It's very exciting. That is going to be my next billion-dollar company. Things are going great. They're continuing to go great. We're selling individual beach listings. We've raised capital from some of the best investors in the world. We're in the process of just starting to raise another round right now of capital as well.
How are you planning to monetize that? Is it ads?
It's not ads. So a couple of different ways. Each individual beach pages has 8 categories. Description, and it goes through activities, amenities, parking, fun fact. Then it talks about attractions. We list 5 with links. Restaurants, we list 5 with links. And hotels, we list 5 with links. So those links will go back to their websites. We only have 5. Yelp, for example, will have 300 listings in South Miami Beach or whatever. They'll take 400, 500. You pay for those by the day through programs, and you pay them for the listing. We only have 5. They pay a listing fee every year to be in there.
Wow.
So despite the traffic being small right now, we're growing our traffic double last month. As we get more and more traffic, these listings are going to be things people want. We've been able to sell listings today because we only have 5 spots and it's limited. So if you're a restaurant on a beach or hotel, you want that spot. So we've been very successful. We think that's going to lead to $100 million or $200 million revenue stream each year. So that's one way we're going to have licensing our data to government tourist boards, large travel sites, hotel companies, maybe Facebook, Instagram, companies like that, and then advertising, of course. But we want to keep the site clean, Apple-esque. I'm very big on design. I'm very big on light and bright, and I want it to be a beautiful website where people go there and say, "That's just beautiful," and you want to keep going. People want to explore. People want to explore beaches. They want to see what it looks like before they go. But we're very, very excited. We've had a couple of companies come to us. I'm not going to name them, in the past 3 years and saying, "We'd love to buy you." We have a very valuable database. Company's not for sale. And as I said, things are going great.
So in terms of building traffic for something like that, so for me, like I might even go to the site, not even really know the monetization plan. I just, I'm looking for a beach. Does it grow mostly just from word of mouth because it's so great? Okay, so is it word of mouth?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of businesses, as you know, including the 2 businesses that you built that have been successful. And by the way, congratulations on your success.
Thanks.
People need to learn about your company, right? So in a lot of businesses, you can put Facebook ads, your rate of return. You spend $1,500, you get $3,000 back. You'll do that all day long. As an experienced CEO and a fiduciary of people's capital, I will not spend a penny unless I get 2 pennies in return back. We're not going to pay for traffic. You cannot build a successful business like ours paying for traffic. There's no return on that money. Even if we had Kim Kardashian, well, maybe Kim, but we're not going to pay some influencer to promote our company either. We're a worldwide company. We actually have traffic in all 212 countries throughout the world. And we're just not going. I'm talking about we have individual users in all 212 companies throughout the world, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And so we're not going to pay for traffic. We're never going to do that. It's going to be word of mouth, and that's how we're going to build the company.
When you initially started sending traffic to it, is it just
well, we didn't send any traffic to it. People just
how
came
did
to
they
the
find
site.
it? Like, was it you sending links out? Was it SEO, right?
Yeah, SEO.
Really just SEO. Wow.
And now we have a whole team doing that. We've really focused on that the last year. So we have a team doing that. We never had somebody on the team full time doing that. That's made a huge improvement in our traffic, and we're building out that team right now.
A couple questions I want to ask so for people watching the podcast can learn, because I think you've had a pretty incredible journey, and I think there's a lot of lessons you can take from it. So first, let's dive in with the tech company. If someone wants to get into tech, would you recommend they learn coding, or would you recommend they just find someone who knows the tech and they focus on the business aspects?
I think everyone's different in terms of what they want to do in their career. If you want to be a programmer, obviously you have to learn coding. But if you want to be a successful CEO in a tech business, you definitely do not need to learn coding. It's something that I think is a good skill set. You talk to different people. Should you take it? My kids in college, should they take a coding class? I'd like them to. You do not need a coding class to be successful in the technology world.
In terms of moving into investing, I find it fascinating that, you had a couple investment bankers and then you stopped. Did you learn along the way simply through experience? Was there any types of mentors you had, books? I mean, I think a lot of people might want a venture capital firm, but there's a lot more risk than they might know about, right? And you're basically using your own funds, which makes it even more risky, because a lot of people who start venture capital funds, they're just using other people's money. So it's not... Yes, there's risk, but it's really not their money. So how did you really learn? Was it just experience? Was it books? Was it mentors? Was it the first investment bankers?
There's no substitute for actual experience doing something yourself for the first time. I think to be a successful venture capitalist, you have to have worked in a company before. You should be someone who's actually done something, hired people, managed a budget, helped grow, hired and fired, been responsible for something that has some kind of growth to it. Because if you don't know how to run a company or how to manage people, it's hard to become a successful venture capitalist. So as a young kid, I read whatever I could about business, personal finance. I read probably 30 or 50 business books in college and my career. And still today, I still read some. I have a lot less time today to read than I used to, but a lot of it's trial by ear and learning and having mentors in life and people that you can talk to as you build your companies. And so it's just a combination of those things. I'm continually learning. I'm continually trying to improve myself, and you learn something new every day. And that's fun and a huge part of my job.
Something that I found interesting is when you were talking about Sandy is that, and I'd like to hear your take on it, is it seems to me as I've interviewed more and more successful people worth 9 or 10 figures plus, sold big companies, that you're never coming up with this idea. It's almost always coming from a problem, right? Even how you were describing, you were driving out, I believe it was Greece, and you were in the weeds. And so is that what you've seen from all the billionaires you know of talking to? Is it almost always that where it's a problem they see and then they know they can solve it and create this solution? Or have you met any super successful people who are coming up with the idea before there's an actual problem, right? So they sit down on pen and paper and maybe they come with it at their table versus they were out in Greece going to a beach and they had a bunch of issues and then that idea came to you.
Sure. I mean, it's clearly both, right? I think a lot of people start a company to fill a need with a need. So there's been tons of companies like that. You fill a need with a need. You need a computer that actually works, that is faster. You've got people who create those things. NVIDIA today is a great example of one of those companies, but there's a million. I mean, people want to search online. So you had Google, but there were 4 publicly traded search engines before Google. Then you've got companies like Twitter that was never supposed to be a company. And Twitter was just a 150 word or even character where you could send messages back and forth. That wasn't meant to be a company, but it became a huge company, a huge public company that's today part of American culture and world culture. And of course, it's now called X, but there's hundreds, thousands of companies like that that were created from just ideas that were never meant to be a company.
What are the 3 biggest mistakes? Someone's watching this. What are the 3 biggest mistakes you think you've made that if you could go back, obviously everything happens for a reason, but if you could go back and knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Well, I think one of the big things is trust your gut. And sometimes you're so far into a deal where you say, all right, I like this. And then you get deeper and deeper. You see some things in there that, all right, maybe my gut was wrong the first time. And you do your due diligence and you find out certain things and say, okay, well, I'm going to overrule my gut, but your gut is usually right most of the time. The second big one is relying on other people to do your due diligence. So let's say we are putting in $100,000 to $1 million in a deal, and they've got some of the best venture firms in the world, from Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, Benchmark in that deal. Some of the best venture firms in the world. They've got huge amount of teams. They're experts. They're smarter than me, more experienced, more successful than me. Figure they've done the work. Well, that's a huge mistake. Relying on other people to do your due diligence is a massive mistake. I've done that in the past, and really through my own due diligence skills and research skills, which I'm very, very good at. I'm very good at preparation. I have a book called Extreme Preparation coming out. Extreme Preparation is something that I'm building a brand on. I do a lot of personal coaching on. If people out there are interested in my personal coaching, please DM me at Randall Kaplan on Instagram. But I wish I had done more due diligence on a lot of deals that failed. And in terms of the third one, I think when you have the wrong CEO or wrong executive, fire fast. People say hire slow, fire fast. I think it's very hard to fire people. We all have jobs. I mean, for people who are in the working world, who are not independently wealthy, they have a salary. And that salary pays food, rent, school, tuition for their kids. They allow them to live. And when you're making a decision to fire someone for a variety of different reasons, they're not the right person to lead the company, they don't have the right leadership skills, it's just wrong. Clearly, if someone has done something wrong, dishonest, boom, that's an easy one. But I think hiring the right people is very, very important. And I've seen so many times throughout the years where we knew it was the wrong CEO, we let it ride a little bit, and ultimately these companies failed where it's possible, or in some cases even likely, that the right CEO would have made them successful.
In terms of that last point, appreciate you sharing that. If you are in a situation where maybe you know it's not the right person, but you don't have anyone else ready to step up, do you recommend that that entrepreneur waits until they have someone to replace them, or you fire immediately and you just make it work?
Well, I think you're skipping a step, and the step is that if things aren't going well and there's no one else there, there is nothing else you can do. You're stuck with that CEO. But one of the interesting things is when you fund a founder of a company, you want to make sure and ask the question, even though what they say today may be different than 5 years from now, if you're not the right CEO to lead the company ultimately through its growth up into the point where you may have a sale, are you going to be the type of person who, for the betterment of the company and its future success, going to be able and willing to replace yourself with someone more qualified than you? And that is a very common discussion later on where, and you see it playing out in the newspaper today all the time, where the founder either gets pushed out or it's time for the founder to leave. But in many cases, that founder doesn't want to leave. And in that case, it's unfortunate when founders, they have a boss, they report to the board can fire them. And in some cases that happens. So I think it's really important when you're funding a company to make sure, and it's very difficult to predict out in the future, if that person and founder is going to relinquish control of the company and say, all right, this person is better than me, I'm going to step aside to become executive chairman or something in a similar role where they're not running the company.
Something that I admire you for is you're obviously into philanthropy. I want to give you an opportunity. You have a few things you do. I just wanted you to maybe speak a little bit about what those are, and then also what made you decide to get into it, because there's a lot of successful people, they don't get into it at all.
It started really at a young age. My grandmother, who is my hero, was raised in foster care, but she was a volunteer as a nurse in Detroit for many, many years, and would go visit sick kids in the hospital, and I'd see her in her uniform as a young kid. And when I would meet her on Sunday, I said, "So, Nana, what was that all about?" And she really taught me at a young age the value of giving back and helping kids less fortunate than you. And so at a young age, there was something called the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon. And it was a big thing then. It's not really today, but it was on the news. It was on CBS, and people would raise money. They'd go to CBS news station. You'd put money in the tiller, and then there was a live telethon throughout the country. So my brother and I, we did that. We'd raise money in the neighborhood, selling lemonade. And then as I started my career, I thought, all right, I still want to give back. I volunteered at Michigan, doing something similar to my grandmother, visiting sick kids. And then as I got later in my career, I thought, all right, what else can I do? And at age 27, I started a charity event called the Justice Ball for a free legal clinic in Los Angeles that helped 12,000 people a year get free legal aid for housing, food, medical benefits. These people have nowhere to go to. I started this event that became, at some point, the largest under 40 fundraiser in the world. It lasted 25 years, raised over $10 million for a group called Bezedic Legal Services. Then I took a few years off, started another function with my friend John Terzian, who owns nightclubs. Delilah's here in Miami and restaurants throughout the world. We have a function for the homeless in Los Angeles. That's grown. We've had it for 10 years now. We've raised around $9 million for the homeless. We have fun people come to our function. Dave Chappelle, Kendall Jenner's been there. It's super fun. We've raised the profile of that as well. And at some point, I'll be looking at my next venture, and it'll probably be focused on something helping sick kids or kids with cancer.
That's amazing.
And one more thing that I'd really like to say, and this is a common misperception. People think that you have to have money to give back. And a lot of people think as well in the charitable world that young people are not interested in volunteering. That's completely false. I think if you're 20 years old or 25 years old or beginning your career, you can give back. You can volunteer. You could go spend time with kids that need your help or mentorship. There's a million charities that you can do. In many cases, someone has to introduce the opportunity to give back to them. And that's what we did with the Justice Ball. And sure, when I made money, it was easier to raise money for these nonprofits, but it's more important, even in someone in my position, to donate the time, because it's easy for wealthy people to just write a check. It's a lot harder for them to donate their time, and their time is often much more valuable than the money.
As you were coming into money, I mean, I know you have a long story, but it sounds for the most part been very successful, better than most, had a lot of good things happen, met a lot of successful people, either through your own experience or meeting other billionaires, et cetera. You know, Miami's like a hub spot, a lot of rich people here. What would you say to the young
A lot
guys?
of rich people who live in this building, apparently, too.
Yeah,
A couple of billionaires, from what I understand.
Yeah, there's a good amount. So what I'm curious to hear from you is something that I've noticed, and maybe other young men are going to, as they come from maybe less fortunate childhood, or they don't have a lot of money, into a lot of money, and they start realizing they have access to almost anything, can have whatever they want, do whatever they want. Are there any lessons you learned from your personal life in terms of what you should have more of, what you should have less of? I will just speak for myself. I know for me that the more I've been able to accomplish and the more access I've had, it's not that you can't have those things, certain things anymore. It's more of deciding what things are best for you. So did you ever, growing up, have any issues with, where to draw the line with dating or partying or not partying, or, what you saw from others? Like, is there any lessons along the way that you would give to someone who's coming into money and maybe trying to figure out how to navigate their life?
Sure. So there's tons of lessons there. So the first one that I would say, well, first I want to say that I know a lot of men and a lot of women who have come into money, and in the tech world, more than half our companies are funded by women.
Oh, wow.
And I probably know more women billionaire tech founders than I do men tech founders. And if it's not more, it's very close. So it's both men and women. And I think the first thing is, if you know you're coming into money, you should start planning ahead, because when people realize the secret's out, you're going to have 30 people calling you. I remember the minute Akamai filed its public documents to go public, which happens 2 months before the company goes public, there's a whole registration process. My phone rang in a cab with my ex-wife on my way to Chicago. Hey, Randy, it's David, and I'm not going to say his last name. What's up, buddy? Hey, how you doing? Hey, Dave, what's up? He said, oh, I saw the filing today, man. I said, it seems so exciting. Congratulations. I said, what filing? He said, oh, you filed the registration statement today. I said, we did? He said, yeah, let's have lunch. And that was the first of 50 calls. But what I had done before then is I knew I was coming to some money. This is also different. Be unique. Be proactive. Think ahead. Plan your future ahead, and plan it when you really don't need it. And so that's the way I run my business today. That's the way that I make relationships today. I went out and I learned from my wealthy friends who the best money managers were in LA. I interviewed them. And it was something that people hadn't done before this far in advance of making money. At that point, I didn't know how much money my stock was going to be worth. I knew it was going to be worth at least $50 million. Of course, things could go wrong, and people... company may not go public for a variety of different reasons. We all know companies with $40 billion private valuations, WeWork being one of them, who filed for bankruptcy years later. But I went out, I met with people proactively, money managers. So I had my team set before I went public. I had a good CPA as well, because you need someone to really help you plan ahead if you're making money. There are things you can do, tax advantage strategies that you can put aside certain monies and convert current income into long-term capital gain income, which means you have a 20% tax difference on the amount of money that you earn. So instead of the government taking 40%, they're taking 20%. These are all perfectly legal strategies. They're straight up the middle. 100% of founders with good planners will do this. So it's finding a good manager, accountant, lawyer as well. You want to set up maybe limited liability companies if you have a business to make sure people sue you for whatever reason they can't get at your personal wealth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is deciding what kind of life that you want to live. So I grew up humble. I grew up in a world where people didn't really talk about money. They didn't brag. Of course, we had people in the community who were wealthy, who were like that. I never wanted to be like that. I really don't like talking about money. I know today I, in some ways, need to talk about money. I'm here because I'm successful and people want to know the story. It's unique. And I think it motivates people to know you have some kind of money. No one really knows what somebody's worth. First of all, people bullshit their net worth, and most people will say they're worth a lot more money than they are. So I don't talk about my net worth, but have done okay. And so
I'm gonna guess over 9.
okay, okay, and so I really thought about what kind of life I want to live, and I said I'm going to live the same life. You have all these new friends who want to come in your life because you're wealthy, and I really wanted none of that. I was going to keep my friends. My friends have all said, you're the same guy that you were. Obviously, I've got a beautiful, beautiful home. Was able to buy my dream home and build my dream home when I was 33 years old. Going to live in that home forever. It's fun. We have a pickleball court, which we built 8 years ago. And it's fun. It's super social and fun. And we have a very good life. But I don't have a lot of indulgences except art. I love art. Love modern art. I have a very nice art collection, but I don't go blow money. I don't fly private. I don't have a plane. I buy coach tickets, not because I'm frugal. It's because I don't see the need to spend $3,000 on a ticket to New York. I'm Delta Diamond. I love Delta. And because of that, I usually sometimes we'll fly first class and I don't need to pay for it. If I'm going to Europe, then I'll buy a first class ticket. But I think you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Even after I got divorced and I'm single, and obviously it's not that hard to date in LA. And I was very conscious of people who wanted to date me thinking, all right, look at this home. Wow, this is great. Randy's nice guy and seems to be smart, and he's the kind of guy that I'd like to maybe get to know better. But you're very conscious about people liking you for the wrong reasons. So I think that's something you got to look out for. Never done drugs, never smoked pot, never done a drug in my life. Was afraid to do it as a kid. I had a rough childhood, bullied like you. And it was just something that I don't do and that I don't need to do. So I think all of those things, I think you also got to be careful in how you manage your money. People who come into money at a very young age, gosh, I didn't have this. And you see this with basketball players, football players. They grew up with no money. And the first thing they do is they go out and buy $100,000 gold chain or whatever. And I'm saying don't do that. And I'm not saying all football players or basketball players do this, but I know a lot of them, and they buy amazing cars. And I think that's so great. I mean, you work so hard and you want to buy this decked out Lamborghini, and I think that's cool. All I'm saying is, if no matter who you are, athlete coming to wealth or founder coming to wealth, don't blow your money. And I'll give you one bad example of a tech founder who's a very good friend of mine. He started this tech company. He's founded a number of tech companies. One went public. One back in the day before the market crashed, he had a company that had filed to go public. Merrill Lynch was taking them public. They had filed the registration documents. He bought a house in Bel Air, I think a $10 million house. This was 15 years ago. That house today is $25 million easy. And he had 3 Ferraris in the garage. He's a car guy. And he came in and said, oh, Randy, if you want to buy some of my shares, he was looking to become more liquid before the company went public. I said, I don't. Most guys said, no, I'll give you a good discount on the shares. I don't know, Scott. And he said, why not? And I said, I don't think your company is going to go public. Why? And I gave him a bunch of reasons why. So I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but if you're coming in here asking me for my advice or asking me to buy something, and you want my feedback, I'm going to give you my feedback. You're a good friend. And ultimately, that company did not go public, and he was stuck with a lot of things that he bought he couldn't afford, had to sell those cars, had to sell the house, and you see all those kind of things. So manage your money wisely, plan for your future. If you don't have kids, plan for your future kids. And even if you're not having kids today, you can do something to financially plan for your kids well in advance of having kids that are hugely tax advantage to you, that a lawyer or CPA will easily tell you about, that you should all do.
What dating advice would you give a young man who's, again, coming to a lot of money,
Yeah.
trying to figure his way out in that world? Like, what advice would you give?
Yeah, that happened to me actually the weekend before last. I had met, I have all these interesting pickleball games. I have athletes and rappers and successful founders, and we just have a cool group coming, and people bring their friends. So someone brought a friend, 29-year-old, very successful tech guy who is now in the AI business. He has server farms that were meant to mine Bitcoin, and now he's turned that into NVIDIA server farms as well. So he's made a lot of money. He's a really nice guy, and he pulled up, although I couldn't see this, I heard he pulled up in a chauffeur Maybach. And the guy's humble, by the way. He came in, he's humble, he doesn't talk about what he does, but I knew he was successful, and I didn't get a lot of time to talk to him because there were a lot of people there. I'm playing pickleball, I'm the host, it was fun Friday. Yeah, we had a bartender there and drinks, it's cool, and I just want to make sure I'm talking to everyone. So we didn't talk a whole lot, but he called me and said, "Hey, Randy, you want to have lunch?" I said, "Sure." So we're sitting down in Beverly Hills, and he's talking about, sometimes he says, "All right, I'm younger than you are. I want to talk to you about money and what you're doing with yours, and if you have any thoughts on mine." And these are what most people will call unusual conversations, because there's something that most people aren't going to relate to because they're not in that situation. When I was in that situation, I thought, okay, who else do I know who's in that situation? Who else can I talk to? Because it's a hard conversation to have with people who aren't sitting in the same shoes. So I think as well, another lesson is, if you're going to ask people for advice, even your parents for advice, they may not be the best person because they're not the same person you are, sitting in that same seat, making the same decisions that you're going to make. And in this case, this person said, "What'd you do on the dating front?" And I said, "That's a great question. When I got divorced, I had a girlfriend for 2.5 years, not the right relationship for me, was an alcoholic, had been a rehab, I'd been a 40 or 50 AA meetings. It was hard for me. I couldn't help her. And it was a very toxic relationship, the ups and the downs. And I had, I'm going to save you syndrome. And of course, if you've dated someone who has a problem like that, the only person who can help yourself is that person who can help yourself." So I said, number one, I would recommend against not dating someone with a substance abuse problem. So that was a super one to check. I said, okay, wouldn't do that. But I said, be careful, by the way, because when I went into it, I didn't know until 2 months into it. So that was number one. Number two, how do I find somebody who's a great person, who is going to not like me for my money and is going to have the same values as me? And he said, "I work a lot of hours," and I hear this from everyone. I had this conversation 2 days ago as well with a woman who said, "I'm working on building my career. I can't meet a guy." So when I was single, I didn't really have a problem meeting women. People would try to set me up. I wasn't really into that, so I tried to meet people on my own, and I did. And while I was dating, and I was dating a lot, I was dating a lot of the wrong women, mostly all the wrong women, looking for the right woman, until I met Madison. It was the most incredible woman in the world. We got engaged 3 months after we met. We've been together now 11 and a half years. We have 2 incredible kids, 7 and 4. But I was always looking for the right one while dating the wrong one. And I think this sounds weird, and I'm not trying to make romance something business or numerical or quantitative, but I do believe it's all about meeting the right person. And the only way to do that is to meet a lot of different people. And so what I asked, and I have a lot of well-to-do friends, And I asked, how do you meet them? Do you go on Match.com? And they said, well, I really don't do Match, but I use something called Raya. Now, I've never been on a dating app, and I'm not promoting Raya, but from what I know, my wealthy men friends use that app because it's a little different than Match. And so, right or wrong, I don't know, but my advice to them is just be careful, trust your gut, and try to meet people who are not in it for the money. People know.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a volume game, right? It's like business, like
The
knocking
total volume
doors.
game.
Like you get enough volume, you'll find the right girl. It's like an application, right? You got to just date a
Right.
little bit.
What I hear too is, oh my God, I've been on that app. I can't find anyone. It's terrible. I'm getting off the app. Well, really? I mean, how else are you going to meet somebody? I mean, go for coffee, make it safe, right? You don't have to spend a whole night, 3 hours, 4 hours, and then say, oh God, I just wasted a Friday night. Just go meet for coffee. And sure, it may take you 250 dates. Now, maybe not 250, but it's a numbers game.
Absolutely. You've been very successful. Probably don't need to be doing a podcast or coming on podcasts. What's kind of next for you, and what's the reason you're wanting to do this now?
Yeah, so I've always been into giving back and mentorship. I've had some great mentors in my career, and I had a tough upbringing. And I said, if I ever make it, I want to be able to give back and motivate people. So I've had a summer internship program for the last 20 years. We have 32 to 36 kids each summer. It's become a thing on college campuses. We had 7,400 applications this year for 34 spots. It's a 12-week program. It's boot camp, 8 to 6. It's a teaching internship where I spend 60 to 90 minutes a day with the interns. It's life-changing for them. I love it. I love the mentorship. And around 8 years ago, one of the interns said, you should start a podcast. You have all these guest speakers every week. I've had the CEO of Dale Carnegie, who's actually a mentee of mine. I've had professional athletes, venture capitalists. I've had the Morningstar Manager of the Decade. All my guests are very, very successful. They come in for 1 hour each week, and the students love it. It's become a hallmark of the program, as is my teaching. And so one of them said, you should start a podcast. I said, no one listens to podcasts. That's not a very good idea. And I was uncomfortable speaking in front of the camera. I mean, you put a phone in your face and you're all awkward. And so, gosh, I could never do that. And so 3 years ago, I woke up one day and I said, I'm starting a podcast. I had never listened to a podcast. I still have not listened to another podcast in my entire life. And I just said, I want to do it my way. So I started a podcast to give back, to motivate and inspire people to reach their potential, to overcome our challenges in our quest for success. And that was the goal and motivator. My goal in life, one of them is to inspire, motivate, and make a difference in the lives of 100 million people. And so my podcast, I'm late in the game, but I have some of the best, most successful people in the world on my show, from Mark Cuban to Mike Tyson to Dana White came out this week. Athletes like Sugar Sean O'Malley, private equity people, Orlando Bravo, David Rubenstein, venture capitalists like Tim Draper, rockers like Sammy Hagar, Mike Posner is coming out next week. Took a pill in Ibiza. We got that, which is one of my anthems. We sang the song together on the show. Very cool. I have Jason Derulo coming up as well in 2 weeks. I just interviewed Dan Martell. I have David Meltzer coming up. I have Matt Barnes, Sean Payton, Sean White, Steve Wozniak. It's going great. And I finally, last week, hit the charts. Actually, 2 weeks ago, hit the charts. And as of yesterday, number 7.
Congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And what would you say, since you've been, I mean, again, you've just met so many people. And I think that's so amazing in the sense that you could probably pull or see similarities. What is the most common thread across super successful people that you seem to see over and over and over again?
It's always work ethic and drive. Everyone's going to talk about something else. And those factors are all relevant, and it's a different weighting system for each people. But I've always said work ethic is the most important determinant of our success, professionally and also personally, because relationships take work. I don't care if they're friendships, dating relationships, marriages, whatever you do that's important in your life takes work. In business, work ethic is everything. So is drive. I've always wanted to fund people, and I was like this, where I thought, if I'm dropped off in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a raft, and I'm terrified of sharks, by the way, then I will find land. And that's always been my drive and my thought process. Those are the kind of things that motivate me. Those are the kind of people. So it's work ethic and drive, passion, empathy, listening skills, leadership skills, communication skills, sales skills. Those are all critical. And I think some of these things people don't really think about, like empathy. That's one that I've heard from a lot of different people. And as I thought about it, geez, I haven't heard people talk about that before, but I think about my own career in being a good leader, and I've done it, but I haven't consciously named it before. So I think you really got to put yourself in different people's positions. A lot of people, sadly, not consciously forget where they came from. I remember every couch I slept on. I remember feeling anxious about my job. I remember what it felt like to get fired. I remember what it felt like where I couldn't buy this pizza this week because I wasn't making salary, or I wasn't saving for my future. Or I wanted to buy that cool suit that I wanted for 5 years, but I couldn't buy it until it went on sale, and I wasn't really sure whether I should or not. So you put yourself in this situation, and it helps you become a better leader. And I think all those skills are important traits and ingredients of success, of successful people.
You have an amazing story. For anyone who wants to find you or connect with you, where's the best place for them to go?
At Randall Kaplan, Instagram, go to my YouTube channel, In Search of Excellence. Please subscribe. Please follow me. Please comment. Please tell your friends about your show. Please check out Sandy as well, Sandee. I also have a best-selling coffee table book of my drone photos from around the world called Bliss. We've sold over 10,000 copies. It's a great gift to bring to someone's house rather than a bottle of wine. And those are the ways you can find me.
Awesome. Randall, thanks for being here. Great conversation. Wish you all the best.
Tanner, I appreciate you having me. Thank you. Congratulations on your success and on your show as well.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right.